Hey one, hey all, welcome to Monday, welcome to Countdown Day, and yes, this is going to clue off our year end for 2022. We have looked at 3 weeks ago the top 10 fan-voted Transformers, the best ones of 2022. Then 2 weeks ago, we looked at the fan-voted top 10 worst or most disappointing Transformers of 2022. And then we looked at, 1 week ago, my personal top 10 best Transformers of 2022. And you guessed it, today, next week we'll get back to our usual questions and our usual topics and whatnot. But today we're going to look at my personal list of the top 10 worst, most disappointing Transformers of 2022. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you are at it, light 'em up, baby! Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you are in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through spring, and there are some new items up there. And you could always hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member at any given time. And you know what? This was a challenging list in a challenging year. It's so strange. There's been a ton of issues this year with QC variation. And I think that that's going to affect people's best and worst lists a lot, because my experience might be fantastic. Yours might have been atrocious. Or maybe your experience with a certain mold was terrific and mine was abysmal. This list, of course, is only based on ones that I have in my own personal collection that I have picked up this year. It includes all lines, it includes official, third party, whatever. The second thing that was a huge factor this year was distribution. We are now into 2023, Evolution on the horizon, already out in some areas, like in the US, for example, and I think maybe in some Asian countries, if I'm not mistaken. And here I can tell you, it's not slated until March, and our biggest retailers never ever, first nor last, got off wave 1 of Legacy. As a matter of fact, they never ever got any of the Legacy Leader class offerings at all. None. I was lucky. I basically ended up sourcing mine through GameStop for the most part. Some of it was online, but mostly it was GameStop. Because, you know, I can't believe I'm about to say this, like Toys R Us didn't get off wave 1. A local comic store, I guess, did kind of fulfill wave 2 for me. And Walmart, of all things, never first nor last got off wave 1. Did get the Velocitron, or most of the Velocitron stuff. So all of that kind of said, we do have 2 dishonorable mentions, I suppose. One of them is Spindle from the Wreck and Rule set with Impactor. Funny enough, Impactor was very close to making the best for the year. And I say Spindle is the worst, or a runner-up, I guess, a dishonorable mention, because he did have some tolerance issues. That being said, I don't really care too much because bits and pieces of him really live as part of my custom Onyx Prime. I'd love to one day have a proper version of that, but right now he's sort of a living amalgamation of the fossilizers. That's always sort of changing. I need to find more ways of making him solid, and that's a work in progress. So Spindle is one of the dishonorable mentions. The other one is, and it didn't make the list because I reviewed this on loan and it's not actually mine, but I got to say the NBK King of Sniper. It an impressively large Optimus style robot I guess the rifle was pretty cool, but there is definitely, now I didn't suffer it and I didn't break the one that I transformed, largely because I was aware of this major design flaw, but the way the shoulders work on that and transform and need to fold up, and the specificity, I guess, of the tolerances and just how close it is. If you do not handle the shoulders absolutely perfectly, I could see you tearing an arm clean off. I think it was a very poor design choice. It's the sort of thing that I didn't enjoy doing the transformation. I was glad when it was done, and when I returned it, I said to the owner, yeah, you're getting it like this because I'm never transforming that again, right? To me, like, if the thing that it's designed to do, which is convert, doesn't work very well or isn't enjoyable, then it's got to be a disappointment, right? It has to be one of the worst. The only reason it didn't make it is because I didn't own it. So, with those two dishonorable mentions out of the way, we're going to kick things off as we always do with number 10. Yeah, baby. First. And number 10 is probably going to surprise some people because I actually have 3 versions of this mold, and I think that this one is the worst use of it. It is Earth Mode Mirage. I don't like this mold for Mirage for a couple of reasons. One, he can't accommodate his shoulder rocket thing that he's supposed to have. Although, to be fair, this is a custom one from, I want to say Dragonfly, and he can accommodate it. And I actually have the Siege arms on him because I have the Siege one with the Earthrise arms on him, or I'm saying Earthrise, Earth Mode arms on him, up on the shelf. Does it transform perfectly? No. But is it good enough for me? Yes. And the only reason that this guy makes the list is because for some reason, and I can't figure it out, and I can't explain it to you, but for some peculiar reason, when I do the leg transformation on this guy, they are very tight, they get in their own way, they just, for some reason it works very smooth on the Siege, and it's terrible here. It doesn't work well going to vehicle mode. It doesn't work well coming back from vehicle mode. It like locks in and it's not good. I think the best use of this mold is Leadfoot. I find him to be the smoothest. And the middle of the road use of this mold is Crasher. She hinders on the legs a little bit too, but nowhere close to as bad as Mirage. I wanted to kind of like this version of the mold because it didn't have the translucent, but when the legs really don't transform the way they should, when the thighs, rather than being custom white, are painted white, ergo having a blue inside on the thigh, I find that jarring. And you had to work in a way to put the shoulder launcher up there. Not having that was a big bummer. Just too many flaws here for me to not be disappointed by it, and for that reason he took the number 10 slot. Now number 9 was actually on last year's list from the Kingdom line, but it got a reuse this year in the Legacy line. Actually it was in the Buzzworthy line, and it's Predacon Scorponok. Now I actually think that this one is more successful than the Kingdom one because while it's not animation accurate, I do love this metallic-y purple. I think it's gorgeous. And these legs are pretty solid. They don't really come off. But at the end of the day, oh, and the chest seems to tab better on this one than on the Kingdom one, for me anyway, for some reason. But at the end of the day, it's just not a good mold. It's tiny. Its mass is quite light. All of this back here is hollow. The back of the legs is hollow. I get it. Some of it's for transformation. It's just, for a deluxe, this feels like a Legends, and it doesn't feel like a Legends that was pulled off very well. I have a custom painted version of the original, and this was put out in a year when the Beast Wars Scorponok was reissued. The original was reissued, and I'm sorry, but when you put this next to the reissue of the original Beast Wars Scorponok, the Beast Wars Scorponok reissue is gonna win. It's bigger. It's more burly. It's just plain better. And for that reason, because this guy was and still is a disappointment. He has to take the number 9 slot. Now number 8, funny enough, I actually adore. And I adore the mold, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's one of the best molds we've ever gotten. I am very, very happy to have this character. So happy to have this character. So why is it on the worst list for the year? Because it had a major QC flaw that really it never ever should have had. I'm talking about Shattered Glass Starscream. Now, I love Shattered Glass Starscream. I really do. And honestly, while I know that this certainly is not the traditional body type for Shattered Glass Starscream, I adore the Siege mold so much that I was happy to have it. I think every copy of this, and every time I get this mold, I feel good about it. I've never once felt like I didn't get my money's worth or got taken advantage of or anything like that. I get it. Some people are like, yeah, but the whole plane's on his back and he's a shell. But he folds up so nicely, and in robot mode, I mean, he's pretty much flawless. Solid. Nothing is hollow. Even the spring load back of the legs. But this guy got on the worst list because he turned yellow. And like very, very badly turned yellow. He turned yellow up here on the shoulder pieces. He turned yellow back here on these wing pieces. He turned yellow on the upper back of the leg, on the lower back of the leg. He turned yellow on the hinge in here on this piece. He turned yellow on his biceps. He turned yellow on his elbows. And honestly, I feel like that possibly his forearms might have a touch of yellow on them as well. That might be it. But like, that's a significant number of parts on something that's supposed to be white. He is one of the worst offenders for the yellowing problem. Now, the only good thing is it's fixable. I actually used a very watered down white. And I painted the biceps, and I even painted the elbow hinges. I painted the hinge at the knee and the back of the leg and the lower spring-loaded back. I painted the wing pieces up here. Is there still... I don't even think I got yellow left in... No, I don't even have yellow left in here. And I even painted the hinge up here. Let it dry, but like I said, very watered down. It was easy to cover it, and luckily, even when you move these hinges, the paint doesn't scrape off or anything. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where like, well then what's your complaint? You're able to fix them. The Shattered Glass version of this went for a much higher price than a regular Voyager class offering. I happened to find this guy at GameStop, like in store, and a regular Voyager here, right now, is $47.99. This guy was $59.99. I mean, it was a lot of money as far as I'm concerned for a mainline offering, and within a couple of months, it was yellowing real bad. Not a little bit, real bad. It has nothing to do with sunlight, because this guy wasn't in the sun. It has nothing to do with heat. I live in the North Atlantic Ocean. We don't get much heat. It had to do with cheap materials, cheap plastics. And when you use cheap materials and something that you pay good money for really becomes ruined in a very short amount of time to the point where I had to fix it, something I shouldn't have had to do, that disappointment really kind of ruins the experience. And for that reason, Shattered Glass Starscream, as much as I love the mold, and as much as I love him, has to take the number 8 spot. Now for me, number 7 was the fan-voted number 6, and I no longer even have this. It wasn't for me, and it's this guy. That's right, Legacy Blitzwing. A lot of people have said, it's the best Blitzwing we've gotten. No, it's not. It's not even very good as far as I'm concerned. I get it. Some people love it, and I understand it's popular. But I have talked ad nauseum about what's wrong with it. The gigantic, lazy backpack just connected by a hinge that you can literally just take off. And you can lay the tank, basically, next to the plane. Like, the plane is abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. abysmal. The line across the visor ruins the head sculpt. Why are his eyes so gigantic? I do like the waist. I don't like the silver on the chest. That's not animation accurate. I don't like the part of the tank that comes down over the treads. That's not animation accurate. I don't like the red translucent used in the cockpit. It should be blue. The cockpit, while it's supposed to stick out, it's not supposed to stick out as far as it does. I don't like the beige on the inside of the arms. I mean, I could go on and on. And it was a liter price, and it's not a liter. I'm sorry, the mass isn't there, the parts count isn't there, and the engineering is lazy. It was more than a Voyager, but it's nowhere close to a liter. I can't justify the price. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy the experience. I ended up getting rid of it to somebody who does enjoy it and is happy with it. I still think that overall, the best bang for your buck would have to be the Titan's Return. It's not perfect. It has a ton of issues as well. But, you know, that thing was literally less than half the price of the Legacy around here. And I think it does all three modes more effectively. That's just me. I understand that people will think differently. Some people will love it because Blitzwing is one of those weird ones. He appeared on the best list and the worst list, right? People love him or people hate him. I just happen to be one of the ones that, you know what, he wasn't for me. I didn't think he was buying him, and after I experienced it, I was like, yeah, you know what, I should have went with my gut. Blitzwing, Legacy, not for me, and he took number 7 slot for worst of the year. Now number 6 I like, but that's the story for number 6. I like it, but who's number 6? Legacy Bomb Burst. So I enjoy Bomb Burst. I think that a core class size is the right size for him, even though some people have said, should have been deluxe. I don't think he has the notoriety with the general populace to warrant a deluxe price point. But somebody might see this and say, what a weird looking little bat dude. Yeah, I'm going to get him. I mean, you got to think, forget being a fan. Stop thinking like a fan. Think like a business person. And do you want the sale? You're going to get more for such a fringe character. I mean, imagine if they had called him Blood. You know, that would have been even more wild as a reference, of course, to Japan. Now, I like the guy, but so when I transform him, I don't like how this is kind of loose. When I get him in plane mode, I really wish that the legs and the arms had somewhere more to tab in. Like they're kind of guided into position, but I don't feel like they actually tab in anywhere very securely. It's easy to move things. I wish that these things on his arms had better places to store than here. And granted, you can store them, where? Back on his back here somewhere. I can't remember now. But when you do so, like, this is stuck off. Same with this little axe thing. Like if you store it in here, it doesn't hold particularly well. And when you do it, like this is stuck off on his back like that. I feel like after Iguanus, who I thought was tremendous for a core class, by the way, I feel like this guy was a step backwards rather than an evolution forwards. I thought I was going to like this guy as much as I like Iguanus. But of the two, I was far more impressed with Iguanus than I was this guy. He ended up being the sort of thing where I felt underwhelmed and a little disappointed. Plus, I feel like he should have more of a tummy. I feel like it goes from chest to waist. It's a bit weird. I like him, but I feel like that there's a bunch of niggling issues here when I look at him that kind of ruins the experience for me. And for that reason, Bomb Burst has to take the number 6 slot. And a hush falls over the crowd. We have reached the most coveted of locations, the ever popular halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, I have one that, you know what, people went bonkers for right at the beginning of the year. He is on the best list for X number of people, but I can't get behind it. I'm sorry. Number 5 for me is easily Legacy Drag Strip. This is absolutely no better than the Combiner Wars at all. Why it was more than double the price, I have no idea. There's no more mass here. I don't think the engineering is any better. The gimmick here for the arm, for me, on my copy, just plain does not work. It absolutely does not work. And when the two halves are together, he is really shaky and janky at the waist. Here's the thing. While it's not one that I'm particularly happy with, when I did the review, here's how I explained it. He's a lateral move. He's not better than the Combiner Wars, which, you know, it also has a number of issues. I don't feel like this is better than the Combiner Wars. I don't feel like this is worse than the Combiner Wars. I feel like this is different. I don't feel like this should be double the price. And I'm sorry, but in 7 years, no. Retail prices for things have not gone up. I mean, not to that degree for other things. Only Transformers. Cigarettes haven't gone up as much as Transformers. This, like I said, is a lateral move. It does things differently than the Combiner Wars, but it's not better and not worse. It just has different issues, different strengths, different weaknesses. I feel like somewhere between this and the Combiner Wars, there's a perfect drag strip. At least the Combiner Wars one actually becomes an arm. All this guy does is become a sleeve. And to me, that's not good enough for double the price. He was a disappointment even now, pretty much a year later. And for that reason, Dragstrip has to take the number 5 slot. Now, I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record for number 4, because number 4 is Legacy Wild Rider. So, putting it on the leg is terrifying because the guy just plain does not want to fit. None of these 4 pegs fit well. And when I say don't fit well, I mean I am using all of my might to push this on. And then I'm pushing down like this, trying to put the top ones on. The reason I'm showing him to you on the leg is because I am petrified at the notion of trying to take him off. I usually have to push something through here and hope that I don't break off a peg. I cannot see any scenario where sooner or later a peg or 2 or 3 won't break off from back here. I can't possibly see it. I think the car mode is okay. I think the robot mode is an utter failure, especially with that terrible, terrible backpack. And here's the thing, before anybody says, he is the best Wild Rider we've ever had. No, he's not. He is exactly the same engineering as Combiner Wars. The exact same engineering with only one difference. He has feet. Besides that, it's pretty much the exact same thing. In that one, the chest flips up. In this one, the head flips up. Big deal. That's not an evolution. The arms do the exact same thing. The legs still fold up and tab together, do the exact same thing. Granted, there's no combiner port, but honestly, I think the combiner port functioned infinitely better than this. At least with that one, I can put it on the Combiner Wars Menosaur and take it off, and I don't feel like I'm going to break anything. This terrifies me. And then you have so much red translucent plastic for that gigantic backpack. As I'm squeezing this on with all of my might and taking it off, can you imagine how terrified I am that I'm just going to crush some of this translucent plastic? I don't like the design. I don't like the look. I think it's an abstract failure. Wild Rider should have been, could have been so much better. And for that reason, he takes the number 4 slot. Number 3 I was actually really excited for because it was one of those fringe characters that we don't often get. In fact, pretty sure this is the first time that we've had an update to this character since the days of G1. I'm talking about the TriggerCon known as Crankcase. And by the way, I didn't show this in the review, but if you want the little blasters over his shoulders, I mean, you know, backpack down, backpack up, backpack down, backpack up. Still, these are pretty darn tiny. I wanted to like this guy because I love the skids mold and burnout. The knees are pretty weak, right? Like, the knees are nothing great. These tires back here are easily the weakest tolerance of any of the molds that I have for this guy. They're not terrible, but they're definitely the weakest. Now, I could live with the knees. I could live with the tires. But what really bums me out about this is this. Zero. No friction. None at all. Absolutely zero. And if I push it in, because people said push it in, so I'm pushing it in now with all of my might. Let's try this arm over here. Nothing, not 1 ounce of friction. I don't even feel anything tab. Like, there's nothing holding this here at all. This is an abysmal reuse. This is terribly done. Awful, awful, awful. And if you don't have these little blasters up here and you have one accidentally turned down, then the transformation's impossible. I really wanted to like this, but I think it is one of the worst failures of the entire Legacy line. In fact, sadly, I think it's one of the worst failures of maybe the last 3 or 4 years. Crankcase, he wasn't an improvement on the skids mold. He was a major step back because of terrible, terrible QC. For that reason, he has no choice but to take the number 3 slot. So number 2 was the fans' number 1, and it's point blank. I wanted to like this guy a ton. I've waited so long for him, so did so many fans. Let's kind of jump into the problems here though. The hips should not have been rounded. They should have been squared off. The torso is too skinny. It makes the entire center of this guy look very weird and strange and out of proportion, I guess. Back of the legs, 100%. 100% hollow. I mean, I can see the light, my light through the legs. That's pathetic. But all of that I could look past because he does have some nice size and some good heft. I don't know why you even wasted time including this thing. I really don't. You had this mold. You should have included this. This is Trenchfoot, I think is his name. And I'm going to use that as his Target Master partner because this is abysmal. This is a waste of plastic. It bends at the waist. The legs do nothing. The arms are attached to the torso. Like, what is this, 1984 again? It's 2022. This is engineering from 1984. It's pathetic. And then no bicep swivel, and you put a swivel below the elbow. Why didn't you put it at the wrist? At least if you would put the swivel at the wrist, you could turn this around and turn the wrist around, and at least you could get a nice deep elbow bend. The best I've seen somebody do is take out this screw, change the 2 forearms, and then cut off the hands and glue them on correctly. I mean, I get it. The designer said a lot got compromised when the penny pinchers came in, but too much got compromised here. Far too much. It lets you know where the priorities lie, and I promise you, it's not in pleasing fans. I don't for a second believe that the compromises that were made here had to be made. Their prices are so astronomically high that the profit was definitely going to be there. Maybe instead of 5,000%, you should have said, you know what? To do right by the fans and to do this guy right, we'll just take a 3,000% markup. And if you think I'm exaggerating about those markups, then you really don't know what's going on. Yeah, this guy definitely should have been better. He could be better. Why there's not a third-party upgrade of alternate forearms with wrists that actually rotate is beyond me. It's the simplest of fixes. It's the easiest thing to do to take this guy from number 2 on the worst of the year to probably, if you could at least deal with those arms, to make him one of the best. Granted, you'd still be missing a bicep swivel, but man, oh man, at least a deep elbow would help hide the pain just a little bit. So many woulda, coulda, shoulda here. So many compromises, and all of them glaringly obvious that Point Blank has to take the number 2 slot. And funny enough, my number 1 is kinda, sorta, the fans' number 2. It is Velocitron Speedia 500 Road Rocket. Now, number 2 is actually the Legacy RC, but Road Rocket took it for me. I don't have the RC. I thought that that thing was a huge failure, and I didn't waste my money on it because I don't think it looks like RC at all. I don't see RC in it. This is abysmal. This is a neat design that should have been good, but I had to try and fix literally everything on here. Ninja Bill would be able to tell you. You'll see now, like even now, this is falling back. Like, okay, so see if I can explain this. Oh, God, this is so bad. So there's a little piece in here that was stuck up on the back. The ball that was in here was in the other way. Basically, this thing was basically backwards and upside down, right? Like, I can't even explain it. Even now, I've put it the right way, and the ball that's in here is very loose. The torso, I mean, there's There's zero friction. There's nothing that holds this up. Not a thing. Not a thing holds it up. Zero friction. If you try to use her waist swivel, all you do is you pop her in half and this pops out because the black plastic used on the side here is super thin, super flimsy, super weak. I had both of these sections. They fell off because the mushroom peg was malformed and just didn't work. I had to fix those. Both of these tires, super floppy and loose, had to fix those. Had to squeeze the pin on this foot in all the way because it wasn't in all the way. I had both arms come off. Luckily there's pins inside and I was able to squeeze them back on, but the arms literally pulled off of the pins that are in the body. This fell off the back. I had to thicken the rectangular peg that this fits on. I think I didn't need to do anything with the neck joint. And I had to thicken up the peg, the 5mm peg that the front tire pegs in with, because that also wasn't big enough, or the hole was too big, something. I had to fix literally everything on this, and this was 40 bucks. It doesn't have the mass, it doesn't have the parts count, it doesn't have the engineering. It is something that the designers and the penny pinchers should be ashamed and embarrassed to put out and call a product, and they've used it 3 times. If my name was associated with this, I'd be embarrassed to show my face anymore, and I would expect to never ever get work in toy design again because it's just that bad. Road Rocket, one of the most abysmal failures I've ever experienced in all of Transformers. And for 2022, sadly, this mold takes the #1 slot. And there you have it. We've gone from 10 down to 1, and I know that this is a controversial one. I can only speak my truth based on my experience with the molds, based on the value proposition that I was asked to accept. Everybody's going to be different. This year is such a wild year of QC and of distribution that everyone's lists are going to be so wildly different. And I'm sure some of us agree on some things and some of us don't. It is what it is, right? I mean, normally now I go through some of the other votes. I don't have any other votes. That was my personal list. We will get back to our topics next week. But that's 2022 in the books. We're on to everything selects from Magnificus onward. We're on to everything with Legacy Evolution, because in my neck of the woods, Wave 1 of Evolution did not arrive. It's supposed to in March, so that'll probably be May. We'll see. But yeah, for now, there you go. That's my picks. Let me know your worst of the year. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. And especially don't forget, whether you feel it or not, whether you believe it or not, please know that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day, you right there, you do make a difference in the world. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old fashioned way right here inside the videos.